Hey everyone. You know, by now you probably have heard what a lot of people have been talking about lately about Xavier Woods, real name is Austin Creed, and what he had to say on social media, mostly Twitter, about the fans, and how he called what it sounded like to a lot of us, a majority of the wrestling fan base, as nothing more than entitled infants, brats. He pointed out basically that we have all these options with all these other promotions, and yet he calls us out because of the fact that we basically complain and feel like we should be given what we want. That this is how certain things should go. This is who should be pushed. This is how long a match should go. This is why this should happen and that should happen. And a lot of people that I watch and listen to, like Alex, aka the Dalyxman on Dalyxman's World here on YouTube. Jeff, known as the Schleg Daddy over at OTRSCentral. Jason Solomon of Solomonster Sounds Off, who I'm pretty sure talked about it this morning. A lot of us do agree, anybody that's talked about this so far, and will be talking about it, a lot of us do agree that yes, with any fan base of any kind, whether it's sports entertainment in general, it doesn't matter. You're going to have fans that feel they're entitled to have things done a certain way. I'm not saying that Xavier is in the wrong in saying that. And I'm not saying he's in the wrong for basically saying what he did about the fans. He has all the right, even if we don't agree with some of what he says. You know, and a lot of people that have talked about this have used various examples of other media, sports or entertainment, or a hybrid of both, to exemplify exemplify the fact, I should say, that wrestling isn't the only place where this happens. Basketball, NBA, baseball, MLB, football, NFL, you know, hockey, NHL, the WNBA, Women's National Basketball Association, you know, MLS, soccer, you name it. You know, UFC, the WBO, the WBA, the IBF, Bellator, you name it. There is basically a good portion of fans that do fall into that category of entitlement, that feel like they are entitled to have things done a certain way, that they are entitled to know what's going on behind the scenes. Heck, I'll even give you an example. You can see behind me, by now, anybody knows this, I'm a fan of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. And by now, I would dare to ask, what adult out there isn't a fan of a show like My Little Pony Friendship is Magic for what it is? Or even its spin-off, Equestria Girls. Who's not a fan? But even a show in a franchise like Friendship is Magic has dealt with this. They have dealt with this as well. And I'll give you a good example. The creative staff decided in Season 7, in the second half of Season 7, to create an episode that basically disavowed the fans. It disavowed the fans, it mocked the fans, and basically, even though some of the fans did like it because it did reflect basically on how some of us are, a lot of us didn't like it because pretty much we felt in a way that the creative staff was being hypocritical, that Hasbro was being hypocritical in allowing this episode to air and by using this episode to call us out. And again, just like with wrestling, there are some entitled fans in the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic community, fan-based community, that feel like they're entitled to have things done a certain way. They are entitled to have certain characters featured more than anybody else. They're entitled to see an LBGTE relationship become a reality. Stuff like that. They feel they're entitled to see all this happen become a reality. Well, the rest of us are more like, cool, we like where you're going with this, we like how you're kind of hinting at it, and maybe you can build upon it. You know, we're just taking it day by day, step by step. So, basically, long story short, getting back to what I was saying, they used fame and misfortune to basically call the fans out. You know, the synopsis of the plot of the episode basically was the fact that Twilight and her friends agreed to make multiple copies, publish multiple copies of the friendship journal where they had written down entries in there of lessons they had learned throughout missions or adventures or situations during the past first 4 to 5 seasons, and hoped that what they learned would help other ponies and creatures, you know, that are dealing with a similar situation, learn from their own lessons that they put in those entries. But the opposite happened. Instead of being beneficial, it became a detriment, because the ponies and the creatures started to act more like the fans that pretty much were being called out. They were asking things like, are characters like Applejack Pinkie Pie related? Oh, should we believe anything Rarity says in her entries, because she definitely doesn't act like that? Or, you know, basically saying the main thing a lot of people have said since about season 4, that Twilight was better without wings. You know, questioning things like Fluttershy, you know, not being assertive. You know, stuff like that. Stuff like that. Heck, they even had a line in the episode where one pony basically told Twilight, you know, we're entitled to know. Oh, what's going on? We're entitled to know, basically. I think this is where we found out about the whole Fluttershy deal. You know, basically this pony is saying, hey, we're entitled to know why Fluttershy isn't being assertive as she says she's become. So, yeah, they've called... So, yeah, even Hasbro and Allspark Pictures, Allspark Animation, DHX, they have used their own show, their money-making show, their gold mine, if you will, known as Friendship is Magic, to call the fans out on their BS. Mostly the entitled fans. But the way they framed it is exactly similar to how people have seen how Xavier Woods is framing his comments on social media about the fan base. And that is, they feel they've basically used this episode to frame the entire fan base as being entitled brats or infants because they want things a certain way. And basically the show's message in its own way, the creative staff's message, Hasbro's message, DHX message, through the main characters and everything, was, look, yes, these characters have learned these lessons. These characters, it's like, look, these lessons that they learned are true. They are real. That's what happened. But it takes time for characters, like let's say a Fluttershy, to really remember what she learned and go back to it. The same with a character like Rarity. Everything Rarity put as entries in the journal basically reflects truthfully on what she's learned, but Rarity being herself still kind of has to learn or relearn from those lessons because the way she is viewed. The point is, though, like I said, getting back on topic, the episode framed the fan base in the same way, similar as fans, like I said, are seeing how Xavier Woods is framing us with his little rant or call out on social media, basically saying that we're entitled infants, and we're not the entire fan base. Again, like I've said, and Alex has said, and Jeff has said, and many others have said or will say, there are entitled fans out. There are a portion of the fans in any fan base. There are portions of fans in any fan base that feel they're entitled to have things done a certain way, or to know certain things that happen. Well, we as fans will come out on social media, like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, And we won't, and basically we're not coming out and saying, look, we want things this way, and this is why. No. All we're asking is for the product known as WWE, mostly, let's say, its flagship show, Monday Night Raw, for the 3 hours it's given by USA Network, to be better. All we're asking for WWE is to be better at what it does. I mean, people pretty much see 24 hours after what many consider the worst Monday Night Raw of all time, or one of them anyway, they see a big difference with SmackDown Live the following night, and even a pre-taped version of NXT the night after, and in the combined 3 hours of those two WWE programs together, fans see exactly what WWE can be, especially with its flagship show. But what makes us frustrated is that we don't see any effort. And what we're calling them out about, just like Xavier Woods calls us out, and we have the right to do this just as much as he has the right to do what he does, or say what he says. All we're calling WWE out on is the lack of effort. Now, some could basically say that Raw was bad because Vince McMahon mostly was the one running it, and was the one that rewrote most of it, or whatever. And, Braun Strowman wasn't there, and Roman Reigns wasn't there, and stuff like that. It doesn't matter. That shouldn't be the case. If anything, Vince McMahon, according to several sources, can write a good show, at least can run a good show, especially when it comes to Monday Night Raw. He could do that. He's proven that in the past. And I don't know, maybe it's because he's got so much on his mind that this was the last thing he needed, so he just threw all kinds of stuff together that didn't make sense. I don't know. I really don't know. But the point is, we know Raw can be good. In fact, last year about this time, Raw was basically what SmackDown is right now. It was the show that had the better storytelling. It was the show that had the better in-ring competition. It had meaning. It had a reason, or it gave people a reason to tune in. Well, on the other side of the spectrum, SmackDown was becoming what Raw is now. One of the worst programs on television. But oh my gosh, a year later, whoop! You have a 180 turn, and now the shoe's on the other foot. And all we're asking for WWE is to go back to what they did for Monday Night Raw last year, and what they're doing with SmackDown right now, and basically try to bring some of that over to Monday Night Raw to make it watchable. That's all we ask, is for effort. It's for them to put in some effort. That's all we ask. We're asking for them to be better. You know, that is why you have people like Alex, a.k.a. Dalyxman, Jeff, a.k.a. the Schleg Daddy of OTRSCentral. You know, Jason Solomon, the Solomonster Sounds Off. Greg Morgan of Good Mic Work. You know, and many others coming out and saying, look, you know, we're frustrated with your repetitive booking. We're frustrated with you having repetitive storylines that have been done to death. Please, we're asking you, try to be original. Try something different. We're asking you to give us legitimate effort. That's all we're asking you to do, to try. That's all we're asking. We're not saying you need to do this. You need to do that because we deserve it. You need to do it because we want you to do it. No, we're not saying that. We're asking you to try, to be better. That's all we're doing. And Xavier Woods, I think, knows this. He knows this, but whether or not he's being told to write this down or he's just doing it on his own personal accord, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You know, just like he has the right to call us out on social media for our so-called entitlement, we have the right to come out on social media and vent our frustrations and negative criticism towards a product that we feel and know from past experience as fans for the past 20, 30 years know can be better. And that's all we ask of them to do. I mean, a lot of us are hoping that after this whole Baron Corbin storyline, whatever, is done, that maybe they might say, you know what, we don't really need on-screen authority figures that much. You know, the way they're doing it on SmackDown is working pretty beneficial because They only have Paige and Shane McMahon show up when they need to, and they're letting most of the stuff take place in the ring and between the superstars. Maybe we could try that. But no, they're not doing it. And it's like I said in one video, and I'll say it again. It's like I said, I think what WWE is doing, mostly Vince McMahon, if he's behind some of this, is they're trying to do something that back in 2013, fans like me called them out on. And that is they are trying to recreate for a new generation the corporation story angle. And guess what? We don't want to see it. We don't want to see it because we know they're better than that. We know that they could be better than going back and repeating themselves with a storyline that we've seen done to death. And not just seen done to death in WWE, but done to death in other promotions. Heck, they did it to death in WCW. They did it to death in Impact Wrestling when it was TNA. I'm sure they've done it to death in CZW, ROH, MLW, you name it. And here's the thing though. There are several of those promotions that I just mentioned that realize they've done this to death, they've done the story angle to death, that have gone away from it. And the only time they'll ever mention any kind of management or people in charge is when a wrestler comes out and mentions them. Like recently, Tyra Valkyrie came out on an edition of Impact and told Tessa Blanchard that she spoke with Impact Wrestling Management and they gave her a shot or another shot at Tessa Blanchard at the Homecoming pay-per-view because of the way Tessa somewhat won her match and the way she's been acting or something like that. I don't know. And to add fuel to the fire, a bit of spoilers, Gail Kim is going to be the special guest referee, which we can assume is going to be appointed that position by Impact Management without us seeing Impact Management. You know what I'm saying? You see, if you want to have authority figures in there, fine. But do it in a way to where they're not freaking in the spotlight. And that is what, and those are things, Xavier, if you're watching, or anybody's watching, that myself and many other fans are frustrated with. And that's why we come out on social media in places like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, you name it, and we vent our frustration and our criticism for the repetitive booking and storytelling. All we ask, again, and I know I sound like I'm repeating myself here, but all we ask is for them to try and be better. Try to be more original at times. You know what, maybe after the whole Baron Corbin deal, take a break from it. Take a break. Maybe have Stephanie come out and say, okay, you wrestlers think you could do better, you superstars think you can be better off without someone in charge? Fine. Do your own thing. Let's see how far it gets you. And that would work. You don't have Stephanie on screen anymore. You don't worry about an authority management. You let the inmates, as the storyline would go, run the asylum and see what happens. And that could create for interesting television. And you know what? If they do that to us fans that come out on social media and vent our frustration, that would be a plus in our eyes because at least they're trying something original. They are trying something original. Well, they may have done it, or at least attempted to do it in the past before, but at least they're trying it once again. It's something that we don't see repeated on a daily basis or yearly basis. It's something we haven't seen done in almost half a decade. And yet when it's done, guess what? It creates for interesting television because you want to see how things are going to go. And I guarantee you, even though it's been half a decade, if you will, 4 to 5 years, or it's going to be a half a decade next year, if they go that route, people will tune in because they won't know what's going to happen or how things are going to come about. To me, you do something like that, you decide to go in that direction, even though it's a bit of a repeat or redo of something they tried 4 to 5 years ago, at least it's something different. It's something different, it's something unique, and it gets people's interest. It garners their intrigue to tune in and see what's going to happen. Because, like I said in a video, and I'm sure anybody else would agree with this, the only reason they're booking Baron Corbin and Alexa Bliss into these roles is they're setting them up for championship matches in the future. Baron Corbin somehow, some way down the line against Brock Lesnar, and Alexa Bliss somewhere down the line once again against Ronda Rousey. We already see that coming. You know, to a lot of us, it's like, why don't they just have both come out since they have the power and basically say, hey, you know, Ronda, Brock, come on out. And you have them come out, as let's say Brock's in the building, and says, as the general managers of both divisions, we hereby strip you of your belts and reward ourselves the championships, and thus now we are champions. If you're making them act like they're that powerful, why don't you have them do that? I'm just saying. And a lot of us that criticize and are frustrated would agree that makes more sense to do it that way than dragging out and being repetitive in what you're doing. Because at least you're changing things up, you're making it original, you're actually having the heels that have this power, abusing it to the point that they've stripped the champions of the belt and rewarded themselves with it. It makes sense. So getting back on topic here though, for someone like Xavier to come out and say that we're entitled because we want things a certain way, no. Again, there are a certain amount of groups that are like that. And that's for any other form of sports entertainment, sports, professional sports, overall entertainment, whatever. You know, anywhere, it's the same thing. You're going to have a certain group of entitled fans that are like that. We, though, as fans, all we're asking is for a company like WWE, which is supposed to be the be-all, end-all of professional wrestling and sports entertainment, to do better with the main, especially when it comes to the flagship 3-hour show known as Monday Night Raw. All we ask them is to do better, to try to be better, and not be repetitive and sloppy and nonsensical. We want them to have some kind. All we ask of them is to make some kind of effort to get people interested in your product once again, so you won't have to worry about fans coming out on social media and going hashtag Raw Cleanse. You don't have to worry about that. You won't have to worry about that period if you just try to be better. And that's all we ask. We're not saying, oh, you have to do this right now because that's what we want. No. All we're asking is for you to do better. I mean, Alex basically said it best in his live stream. Even people like him, me, Jeff Siegel, the Schlag Daddy at OTRSCentral, Greg Morgan at Good Mic Work, Jason Solomon at Solomonster Sounds Off, Don Tony, Kevin Castle, everybody that does a podcast or a video of some kind that is a fan of wrestling. We have there's a fan of wrestling, a fan of a variety of things. We have our own critics as well. I can't tell you how many times I've had people get on me just because, even in my own family, just because I like something like MLP. Or just because I talk about this or that. I've had those. I've had people say you could do better. And giving me suggestions that I've tried to do when it comes to making videos. The same thing with Alex and Jeff and Jason and Greg and Don and Kevin and OK Kayfabe. You know, we've all had people telling us, you should try this, maybe it'll work. Or they've criticized us saying, oh, you suck because you don't like this. Or you don't have this on your channel, you should. Or you should act like this. You know, we have people that are like that. That criticize us because of who we are. And they have the right, as much as we may not like it, and as much as it may hurt us, they have the right to do that. And all we could do, thankfully to places like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, what we can do to avoid that is either hide their comments, block them, delete the comments, or whatever. We have the right to do that. So even if we don't block them, but we hide their comments from being seen on our channel, they still have a right to comment, even though we won't see it. You know, and even if we block them, yeah, they have the right to come out and say, oh, this person blocked me because of this. They have that right. So we as content creators, we as podcasters, we as vloggers, I should say, bloggers, if you will, you know, we have our own critics. We do. And those critics have a right to come out and vent their frustrations about us, the criticisms about us. Heck, like I said, I'm a fan of MLP. Everybody that's in the so-called analysis community and Riff Cafe communities, like a Silver Quill, a Lightning Bliss, a Keyframe, a Josh Scorcher, aka Firebrand, a Terendaga, a Dr. Wolf, a Sweetie Bloom, an Eliora, a Kichi, you name it, they have, a Miss Anthropony, a Cartoon Gentleman, you name it, the editor, MLP. Point is, all of them have their critics and naysayers as well that will come out and say, you should do this, you should talk about this, this is why, da 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 da. They have that too. So wrestling is not the only ones, so professional wrestling and mostly WWE are not the only ones that have these kind of criticisms and frustrations aimed at them by the fans. We as people that do the same thing, that go on social media and vent our frustrations, vent our criticisms, that come on places like here on YouTube or Dalymotion or Twitch or Vio or Vimo or whatever, we have our critics too. James Wolfe, Doug Walker, Joe Vargas, Louis Lovehawk, they all have their critics and frustrated critics as well. And they will be called out on social media because of things they may review or fans want them to review. It's again, WWE and wrestling's not any different. It's not. And for someone like Xavier Woods to call out in the views of some people reading in context of what he put out on Twitter, to call out everybody in the fan base, hardcore, casual, mediocre, doesn't matter, entitled infants, is bad. It's not good. He has the right to do it, but it's not good. Because, like I said, he has the right to say that, but it's not good because what you're doing is alienating the fan base that supports you, that supports the guys you're associated with, like the New Day, Kofi Kingston, and Big E Langston. You're alienating the fans from you and them, or in association, them as well. So you can't do that. I mean, I get athletes of all kinds are sick and tired of fans, people in the fan base saying they should do this or that or this should happen. We get that. We understand that. Like I said, as content creators, we feel the same way. But it's a fact of life when it comes to social media. It's like my sister would tell me sometimes when they would tease me about some of the videos I would do, things I would talk about. She would tell me, you put yourself out there. You put yourself out there so you deserve what you get. Or you deserve people saying things that they do. And the same could be said for WWE and NBA and all that. They put themselves out there, so whatever they do or the athletes associated with them do, it's on them. It's on them. And all we are saying to WWE when they put out something like they did on Monday, basically what I'm saying is when we see a place like WWE put out what they did on this past Monday, then we have the right to call them out because they're basically putting that out in the public eye. They're putting themselves out there to be castrated, to be eviscerated, to be deleted, as Matt Hardy would say. To be ultimately deleted. That you put yourselves out there when you do stuff like that. So of course you're going to get negative feedback. Heck, you're going to get negative feedback. Even people that used to work for the company have given it negative feedback. An editor, a publisher or an editor for a German newspaper in Germany called WWE out on the crap this past Monday night. And because Raw airs on Wednesdays in Germany, said people don't watch it. So the thing is, when you put yourself, it's like my sister says, you put yourself out there when you do this stuff. So when WWE put themselves out by doing the show that they did, of course they should expect the negative feedback, the negative backlash, and all that. They should expect to get basically obliterated, eviscerated, from existence. I mean, they're basically being put into a situation to where they might have to follow in the steps of Star Trek. What is it? Star Trek Voyager, I think it was. It was Star Trek Voyager, I believe. When Star Trek Voyager, just in case you guys don't know, I think it was Voyager or Deep Space Nine. I think it was mostly Voyager. But basically, long story short, any fan of Star Trek or science fiction of any kind knows this. There was an episode they did in one of the later seasons called Threshold. And what happened, the main plot about this, was one of the main characters was mutating into a lizard because of he was exposed to something or whatever. He was turning into a lizard person or whatever. Long story short, he kidnaps the captain, Jane Hathaway, or whatever her name was. He kidnaps the captain, and by going into this warp 10, that's what made it happen. He was affected by warp 10 or something. Going back into warp 10, he now affects not only himself further, but he also further affects the captain and turns him into lizards. And not only does he turn them into lizards, but when they're discovered and then brought back to the ship to be restored, it's also discovered that they mated and had babies. And the babies decided to go off on their own now because their parents, because I guess now they're old enough. I don't know how time works on the planet they were in. I don't know. But yeah, basically they had babies. And because this episode was so bad, even to the point that the cast and crew regretted it even existing, it has been eviscerated and removed and deleted from continuity. Yes, when you buy the DVD set and Blu-ray set of Voyager, yes, it is part of that still. It's still on there. It's still part of one of the seasonal lineups. It's still there. Doing its rebroadcast on channels like BBC America, it's still there. There's no denying it, but even though it's there, many fans and the cast and crew have considered it non-canon. And that's basically the way people are going to look at Monday Night Raw from this past Monday. They're going to look at it as being one of those episodes that WWE could just easily take out of its rotation, find a deletion can, put it in, shut it, and be like, okay, let's move forward. That episode never happened. It doesn't exist. And that's about it. And that's what we as fans are looking at. We're looking at the fact, out of frustration and criticization, that WWE has put themselves in a situation to where that's going to probably happen to that episode inevitably down the line. So, getting back on topic, I know I sound like I got off a little bit there, but the point I'm getting at, when we come on social media like Xavier Woods does, and we vent our frustrations and our criticisms for stuff like that, we have a right to do it. You know, does that make us entitled? No. Are there entitled fans and in the community? Absolutely. But those entitled fans don't represent all of us. And that's the one thing superstars like Xavier Woods have to understand. Look, we get where they're coming from. Yes, there are various other options out there. There's no doubt about that. I mean, he mentioned them. New Japan, AAA, Ring of Honor, CZW, you name it. Even the association, even the promotions that are associated with WWE, like Evolve, ICW, Progress. You know, we get it. We get it. We have all these other options. But here's the thing. Even if we have these other options, even Impact Wrestling, if you will, if they start doing BS, similar to what WWE has done recently with shows like Raw and some of the pay-per-views, you know, if ICW did that, or Progress did that, or Evolve did that, or Impact Wrestling, which has done it in the past, but if they went back and did that again, because they're trying to improve and be better, or Ring of Honor did that, or CZW did that, or New Japan or AAA did that, there's going to be fans that will do the same thing to them. They will go on social media and call them out on the BS, on the crap. They will do that. They will go out and call them out on the crap. They will. Just like they're doing with WWE, because they have the right to do that. They have the platform to do that. So, in the end, Xavier Woods has the right to say what he did, even though when we view it and look at it as him calling out the entire fan base as being entitled brats, we may not agree with that sentiment, but we do agree there are some people that are like that. But all we're doing in the end is just coming out and venting our frustrations, venting our criticism, and all we're asking in return is for a product like WWE, which is supposed to be all end all for superstars and people to go to when it comes to professional wrestling, to do better, because we know they can be better, because they actually have several programs under the company's umbrella that show they can be better, and that's all we ask of them to do. That's all we ask. So, in the end, that's all I can really say on the matter. If you want other people's thoughts, go to OTRSCentral, Dalyxman's World. Tune in and listen to Solomonster Sounds Off, Greg Morgan at Good Mic Work, Don Tony and Kevin Castle, OK Kayfabe, all these other places to hear what everybody else's thoughts are on what Xavier Woods had to say. And that's all I'm going to put out there, guys. So let me know what you think, and I will talk to y'all later.